now is I'm going to give you an equation of a sinusoid, either sine or cosine, and you're going to tell me the equation for it. You're going to write a model for that graph. So here's your basic forms. And you just have to remember what each piece is. So K is when you've moved it up or down. So K is a vertical shift up or down, one or the other. And remember, once we shift it up and down, here's the regular graph, right? Here's the regular sine or whatever. Once we shift it up and down, that midline, this guy right here, now moves up to wherever we shifted it to. So now my graph looks like that because I've shifted it up. So this K right here is actually going to be the midline. And you can calculate it by using the maximum and minimum y values. Simple as that. Lets you know where halfway between them is. Max plus min equals 2, or sorry, divided by 2. That's your new midline. Then look at it and decide if it's sine or cosine. You're always going to look at this y-axis right here and decide where it starts. For example, on this y-axis right here, it starts up at a maximum, which tells you right away that this is a cosine graph. Sine starts at the midline. That's why we calculate the midline first, so that you can see it. Okay, then you calculate the amplitude. Amplitude is going to be max minus min divided by 2. And then I put this plus or minus out in front because if there's a reflection, then it's going to be a negative number. A is actually going to. This right here is just the amplitude. The actual value of A that goes into your equation might have a negative out in front. Okay, find the period and then solve the equation for B. So this time you're going to be given P, and you have to reverse it out and solve it for B. But I'm going to give you a little hint right here. When you solve it, literally what happens is B and P, the period, just change places. So instead of solving, just do this. Find B. Oh, you still have to find the period from the graph. Sorry about that. Find the period and solve the equation. You don't need to solve an equation for it because I solved it for you and just gave you a formula for B. Okay, and then you just have to fill in everything. Let's try this. So we already know that it's cosine. I kind of skipped that step. But let's find our midline. So K equals, looks like the maximum Y, get a different color. Maximum Y is 2. So 2 plus the minimum y is negative 2 divided by 2. That's 0 over 2 or 0. So our midline hasn't changed. It's still the x-axis. That's where y equals 0. So there's no vertical shift. Okay, I decided it was cosine already. Let's talk about the amplitude. So I'm going to calculate the amplitude, and that's going to be 2, that maximum y, minus negative 2 over 2. That's 4 over 2. So the amplitude equals 2. Now I'm going to check to see if it's been reflected. Okay, it's cosine starts at a maximum, and it looks like it's still starting at a maximum, so it's not reflected. No, which means A just equals 2. Okay, K equals 0, A equals 2. Last thing to find is B. Now, first you have to look at the graph and determine what the amplitude, or sorry, the period is. So we've got to figure out how long it takes to make one cycle. Well, with cosine, here is one cycle. So it looks like it ends at 2 pi over 3. That's actually your period. Right? Remember, we started at 0 and we counted at 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, and that guy was your period. Now we're going to use our little shortcut formula here. I've got a fraction to deal with, so I'm going to write it out the long way. 2 pi divided by p, which is 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 3. Got to flip that second guy. Put him over 1. 3 over 2 pi and multiply. 2 pi's cancel, so it looks like b equals 3. Okay, we've got our b, our a, our k, and we know that it is cosine, which means our final answer. The equation for this guy is going to be y equals a, so 2, cosine of b x plus k, but k is 0, so I'm not going to even write it. You can use either variable, x, y, or I'm sorry, x or theta, or whatever you want for that. Okay, let's try this next one. So steps, again, identify our midline. So max y and min y, sorry, looks like it hasn't moved again, right? Looks like the exact same pieces as before. I'll still write it out though. Okay, no midline changed, so here's our midline. All right, next is decide if it's sine or cosine. So I look at the y-axis and the midline, and I look at where the graph crosses the midline on the y-axis. It's starting right here, actually on the midline. It hits it at 2 more points. It's got the intercept in the middle and the intercept at the end, right? 5 key points, which means it's definitely going to be a sine graph. Okay, next is the amplitude. That is the same as the other one. So 4 over 2 equals 2. Now we look at it and say, has it been reflected? No reflection. So A is going to equal positive 2. Okay. Next, we are going to find the period so we can determine B. Now again, it has to make one cycle, and it looks like the cycle ends right there at pi. So P equals pi, which means B equals 2 pi divided by P, which is 2 pi divided by pi. Those guys cancel. Looks like B equals 2. So our final equation is y equals a 2 sine of bx plus k, or we can put theta in there on this one, doesn't matter. We'll put x since we're drawing it on an xy graph. We'll keep it simple. No plus 0 because we don't need to write plus 0 when there's no shift up or down.